Wike himself is a senior lawyer, and indeed he's even a life bencher. And because he's a bencher, we expect the higher distinction of behavior from him.
Let's look at Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended. And it provides that every person shall have the right of freedom of expression, including the freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart ideas and information without interference. Provision. Yes. Now, you are saying that you doubt if freedom of expression is being attacked in Nigeria. We've known, I would not like to call some government, but some governors have arrested journalists in recent time on account of their opinion on issues. And looking at Section 39 of our Constitution, won't that be...
the provisions of Section 39 that you are talking are very correct. You also recall that Section 22 of the same Constitution made provision for journalists to hold government officials and public officers to account.
Okay.
And so, in the process of trying to account, you will find out that they will run roughshod with some public officers. Okay. Recall that not too long ago, the governor of Niger State tried to close a media house.
The Nigerian Guild of Editors and the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has condemned the reported threats by the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, against Shehu Akimbaloye of Channel TV, calling on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to order the immediate and transparent investigation. In a joint statement, the group urged the federal government to ensure the safety and security of Akimbaloye and other journalists facing threats for carrying out their duties, warning that press freedom in Nigeria is in a downward spiral, marked by intimidation, harassment, and attack. The condemnation follows remarks by Wike during a media chat last Friday, where he expressed anger over comments made by Akimbaloye on a political program, saying he was surprised and would have shot him if it were possible to break through the television screen. The presenter had raised concerns about the 2027 elections becoming dominated by a single political party, referring internal issues within the African Democratic Congress. Now reacting, the NGE and SERAP said public officials are subject to scrutiny and criticism, stressing that Akimbaloye, like every citizen, has a right of freedom of expression, including the right to seek, receive, and impart information on matters of public interest. The organization noted that though Wike later clarified his statement, such threats should never have been made, warning that they contribute to a climate of fear aimed at discouraging public interest journalism and undermining democratic accountability. They further criticized what they described as a persistent failure of Nigerian authorities to investigate and prosecute attacks against journalists, saying the trend has embroiled perpetrators and fostered a culture of impunity. The statement, jointly signed by the NGE President Eze Anaba and the Secretary General Okuha Uke and SERAP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadari, read in part, the right of freedom of expression applies to all kinds of information and ideas, including those that may shock, offend, or disturb. But the question is, why is press freedom not fully respected in the most populous black nation on the planet? And what should this mean as we approach the 2027 general election? Well, these and more will take center stage on the show today as we x-ray on press freedom, and that is call for press freedom in Nigeria. And that's what we're having as a major discourse today on the show. On Dialogue, we're talking about the recent call for press freedom on account of what in recent time in the country, and also as the 2027 general elections really approaches. Well, anyway, that's the angle we're having today. And to help us look at this, we have no other person but Barrister Godwin Odjegba is joining us all the way from Osaba. Barrister Godwin Odjegba, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Well, it's a very sad narrative, especially as it concerns that threat from the FCT minister undermining. He has clarified some issues, but like we said, the Nigerian Guild of Editors and that of the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, seems to be really concerned about those threats being made to Shehu Akimbaloye. Now, I just want your reaction as it concerns the threat being made by Nyesom Wike and the allegation that it looks as if press freedom seems to be on the decline in Nigeria. So what's your reaction to this? Is press freedom under attack in Nigeria?
Well, okay, thank you. My reaction certainly is that of surprise. Surprise because Wike himself is a senior lawyer, and indeed he's even a life bencher. And because he's a bencher, we expect the higher distinction of behavior from him. And next to that is the fact that he's a minister of the Federal Republic. So for such people who have positions in society, we expect that they will have decorum, they will have finesse. And so what he has done is uncalled for, it's uncharitable, it's unprintable, given the fact that journalism is provided for by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So I'm deeply surprised and worried that comment came from him.
I'll need to say my second question. Maybe I'll need to rephrase it as you people say as lawyers. Do you feel press freedom is under attack in Nigeria with recent events that's happening?
You said?
Do you feel press freedom is under attack in Nigeria with recent events that have unfolded? Your own analysis. Do you feel press freedom is under attack?
No, usually press freedom is not under attack given the behavior of one particular person. The press in Nigeria is substantially praised to the extent that the plurality of newspapers, so that what one newspaper tries to subdue, another paper will highlight in public space. Even there are plenty of media houses, the television, both public and private. So press freedom essentially is not under threat. Although you see a few cases where some persons are incarcerated for some time without trial, but the press substantially in Nigeria is free.
I'll need to take a different approach because according to data from Reporters Without Borders, the group said that Nigeria dropped 10 place to 122 position in 2025 World Press Freedom Index, adding that at least 56 journalists were assaulted or arrested while covering some of their major jobs in 2024 alone. Now that is even 2025, a report of 2024, and we haven't sure that in 2025 and 2026, the height of attack on journalists have in every way increased. Now, I want to get your insight around this. Do you feel the Nigerian government, be it
generally, Nigerians,
or
especially persons in public service, usually detest journalists because of the information they try to hide. You know, the job of journalists is to expose those information that you try to hide. And to that extent, they run in conflict with persons who hold positions of authority.
Okay.
But given the facts and figures that you have laid out, they don't particularly appreciate and appear to be concerned to only Nigeria and Nigerians alone. Okay. And I think the world over, the journalists suffer some form of attack, humiliation, or thereafter. But the degree also matters. When the percentage is such that it didn't get up to 10 or 20% of the number of journalists that are affected, we could say generally that journalists are not under attack in this country, and indeed in Nigeria as in particular.
Okay, well, if you feel that that's your own view, let's understand.
Yes, technically it is my own view.
Okay, well, you are free to have your own view, sir. But let's look at Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended, and it provides that every person shall have the right of freedom of expression, including the freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart ideas and information without interference. Yes. Now, you are saying that you doubt if freedom of expression is being attacked in Nigeria. We've known, I would not like to call some government, but some governors have arrested journalists in recent time on account of their opinion on issues. And looking at Section 39 of our Constitution, won't that be...
The provisions of Section 39 that you are talking are very correct. You also recall that Section 22 of the same Constitution made provision for journalists to hold government officials and public officers to account.
Okay.
And so, in the process of trying to account, you will find out that they will run roughshod with some public officers. Okay. Recall that not too long ago, the governor of Niger State tried to close a media house. But you recall too that we have about 36 governors and one federal minister. So if one or two persons out of 37 are guilty of these offenses, you recall that those two cannot constitute the majority. That's the point I'm making. I'm not saying for sure that there is no press attack. There is an attack on the press, but the extent to which it is such that it is negligible. That's the point I tried to make.
Okay, so I'm happy for that clarity, because I was almost wondering if you said there have never been any attack on press itself. I'm happy for that.
There is.
I'm happy for that clarity. Now,
what I'm talking about.
Okay. Now, Barrister Godwin Odjegba, do you feel the Nigerian government, even if it's a significant number, not a major number, insignificant number, do you feel that they are open to criticism? Let's look at our political climate in Nigeria. Why is it that our politicians are not open to criticism? It's a question.
Now, your question is double-sword. Whether the Nigerian politicians are open to public criticism, and why is it that they are not willing to be criticized? Usually the job of politics is such that you would like your ego to be massaged. You want people to massage your ego so that they are seen in public domain as a good person. That, again, will make your electoral values high. But because they want the electoral values to be high, any form of criticism, no matter how mild, is viewed as an offense or as an intrusion into their entire political process. So for me, I think clearly that even if whether they want it or not, we have the right to criticize, we have the right to hold them to account. Let journalists and indeed the civil society need to hold them to account.
Okay. Well, you said something earlier, and I really want us to go now to Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution. Now, it mandates radio, television, and even print media that responsibility to ask government to be accountable. Now, my question now is, if we constantly have some of these journalists being suppressed or pushed to the corner, are we having any form of accountability on government? Because the citizens really talk, the citizens really seek for that accountability, and it's only the media that is being seen as a tool in actually seeking for accountability. So how really important is that role of the media as it concerns accountability in governance?
Now, the role of the media cannot be overemphasized. Very, very important.
Okay.
And they are playing it relatively well. When there are issues, when there are infractions in the process of playing this role, civil society, the society itself has the role to ensure that the journalists are protected. That is why you see an overwhelming support to Shehu Kibalori when the minister made the unguided statement. You recall that in one of the teacher stations, I had made the point that as a minister, you need to exhibit finesse. In fact, I said as a governor, so there are certain things you are not expected to utter. Yes. Your utterances, your modalities, your moves, your dressing, and everything encompasses the whole person. But as it were, journalists in Nigeria are the only ones that are constitutionally entitled and provided for by right to hold government to account. And in doing so, the civil society and the general public owe it its duty to ensure that their jobs are protected and their safety is also protected.
Okay, now, Barrister Godwin Odjegba, let's leave that and come now to the issue of having government officials truly accountable. You really agree with me that in recent time that seems to have taken a back stand as it concerns our democratic process. Many will say we came out from a very rigorous and treacherous military rule that gave birth to democracy in 1999. But my question is, during the military rule, we rarely see people criticize the military government without being arrested or in every way be beaten or threatened. Are we seeing a repeat of that now as it concerns this new era, and especially as it concerns a build-up to the 2027 general elections?
You appear to be saying, comparing apple with oranges. Now, under the military regime, they rule by decree, whereas under civilian regime, they rule by law, and the process of making the law takes quite some time through the National Assembly. It has assented to, but under military, it's more of a fiat. Now, under the military, our press appear to have had some level of freedom, even though we had decree for the access of journalists to jail. Under the present dispensation, we have also had a few situations when one or two journalists have been incarcerated. But largely and substantially, under the civilian regime, journalists appear to have enjoyed a wider spectrum of respect and patronage. and even freedom to that extent, I think it is a lot better under the civilian regime than the military regime.
Okay, now let's come now to the political tension that seems to be brewing in Nigeria. That very remark coming from Nyesom Wike was more of an attack on Shehu Okunbaloye on his reaction to the recent travails. Allow me put it that way, of ADC as it concerns recognition of David Mark and Arigoshola faction of the ADC. Now, let's look at the political climate in the country. Do you feel it's getting overheated, and hence there seems to be this build-up of tension as we walk through to the 2027 election? That's my first question. And a follow-up question to follow is this right? And would this not in every way affect or truncate democracy itself?
Now, you recall that the journey to 2027 has started with the conventions, with the congresses that are coming, where the party flag bearers be picked during their primaries and all of that. We expect this kind of situations to continue to arise because there has to be tension while trying to build up political processes. But for what it were, the comment of the Honorable Minister, as I said earlier on, was uncalled for, and it's not befitting of somebody of such status who is also a life venture in the legal profession. So to that extent, we are part of it. But to the extent that, well, how does it affect and reflect on the current political trajectory? It is the fact that when elections are coming, these are the issues that you normally will see, the tension and the process of the tension. What you then find is that there are utterances, there are behaviors that are unguided. You recall that a few days ago, there was the overthrow of the NURTW national president. He was removed, and later he was brought back. And the progress, killing, fighting, and all of these things, they are symptoms and manifestations of the times of 2027. And they will continue to build this until the election is gone. So to that extent, we expect every political office holder and every public office holder to ensure that the statements and utterances are guided so that we can safeguard our society, so that the policy is not unnecessarily hit up.
Now, talking about heating up, just recently we've had reactions. And funny enough, it's not just the PDP that was supposed to be the main opposition party, but rather a new party, the ADC. In recent time, we've had back and forth heightened statements. And if you allow me to take some, like in the dailies today, the APC said, or rather the ADC said, APC is plotting, doesn't want us on the ballot, said Peter Obi. We have no hand in Obi trials or travails, said the chairman. ADC youth gives INEC 72 hours ultimatum to recognize Mark and his group. And we can be going back and forth. We see that the presidency says Obi made his own wrong decision, so don't blame it on us. Countless reactions, countless heightened tension statement that is going on back and forth. Like I said, would this not affect the 2027 election in one way or the other, especially as it concerns unnecessary build-up tension? If you remember, we saw what played out in 2023 elections, the violence that erupted pre-elections and some post-elections. Will all of these unguided statements not lead us to something like that, if not even far more serious, looking at all that is playing out?
Yes, you are very correct, my brother. The only area that I have to share with you is that record that PDP has a balkanized, has been reduced to its problems. The ADC that tried to grow up is now being manipulated by the active intervention of INEC. If you ask me, the role of INEC in that thing is suspicious to the extent that the interpretation of the judicial process by somebody who is a professor of law, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, is closed. Who was the status quo antebellum at the time this election was done was David Mark. And in any case, the Court of Superior Record, the Supreme Court in particular, has admonished the court not to interfere with the internal affairs of political parties, particularly the elections, on how they are elected and who governs them. So then going forward, the number of hostilities, brigandage, and indeed, if you call it, killings and other things that are occurring presently in Nigeria politics cannot entirely be excluded or delineated from the politics that is coming up now. And so, in order for us to go into the election without any issue of violence, what must happen is that the political parties must ensure bitterness, must play politics as it were, politics of ideas, politics of ideology. You know, it's unfortunate that in Nigeria, after 27 years of independence, people still resort to violence because the politics is not seen as a winner takes all. Once you're in politics, it means that your life has transformed from poverty to being a billionaire. This is the kind of thing that's so unless, and of course, you as a journalist and the civil society begin to play their role and continue to play it well, this kind of thing will not easily go out of our political psyche. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barri Godwin Odjegba. Now, you've just highlighted a need for us to, or rather, a need for politicians to kind of play things a bit down and not to unnecessarily overheat the policy. But let's look, let's look at another major one. The right of journalists to also bring forth some major issues is always pivotal if our democratic system wants to really be seen to flourish rather than be truncated. Now, in your own honest assessment as a legal luminary, what advice would you give for journalists that are going through constant attack, threats, and unnecessary bullying, either on social media or anyway? What advice would you have for them so that will not in every way deter them from doing what they need to do?
For journalists, you recall that they belong to a body known as the Nigeria Union of Journalists. Outside of that one, you have the Nigeria Guild of Editors. You also have the Nigeria Proprietors of Nigeria. Yes. Now, all of these are supposed to protect the journalists. Journalists also have the right to report to legal prosecution, in which they can approach the court when they feel that their rights are being breached or being threatened. And to the extent that these positions are available to them, journalists can avail themselves of these provisions, of these avenues that are all over the place. You know, you cannot do without the journalists. That is one thing I can assure you. Once you black everybody out, then the society is doomed for it. So what we can then do is to encourage them to continue to do their work, knowing that the leadership of the National Union of Journalists and the Newspaper Proprietors of Nigeria and even the Nigerian Guild of Editors will be there to speak for them. And even the NBA is also speaking for them. Where they are threatening, the NBA, the body to which I belong, will always ensure that their rights are protected, because once freedom is lost for one man, it is lost for every man. And so we have a duty to work and protect journalists and fight for them, just as they also fight for us. It's a reciprocal relationship.
Now, Barri Godwin Odjegba, you said something I want us to really look at, and that's the role that the NBA should play on account of not just only protecting our journalism, but also protecting our democracy. Many will say our democratic process seems to be hitting the waters in recent time, but we've hardly heard from the Nigerian Bar Association on account of some unnecessary utterances and actions that many feel will truncate our democratic process. So how can the NBA also play a pivotal role in helping to safeguard our democratic process?
Now, the NBA as a body mainly regulates, it's an association of lawyers that protect the interests of members, but also a watchdog to society because of what they call social engineering. Yes. So in playing that particular role, they make comments, issue communiques, press statements as it relates, and in this particular case, they have also made their position known. Position is that the statement made by the Honorable Minister was unguided. And if the need arises for it to be challenged in court, of course they can. If, for instance, if the NBA, the NUJ, or even the Association of Broadcast Organization of Nigeria decide that, as it were, they want to go to court, you can be sure of lawyers is volunteering. And within the NBA, there is a section on human rights that will take up this issue and protect the journalists that is involved in this particular case, and indeed all journalists in the country. Once it is seen that their lives is being threatened or their rights are also being breached. the NBA will come to play. And they have always done that. They will continue to do that.
Okay, now, Barri Godwin Odjegba, I want to take you to something that happened during the weekend and was greatly highlighted yesterday. And that's the recent call by some political parties to boycott the 2027 election. And one of that is the AAC, being run by no other person but Showore, and also the Turaki-led faction of the PDP feels that there's every need to boycott the election with what seems to be playing out, especially as they perceive INEC being favorable to the ruling party and playing a script written by the APC. Now, I just want to get your legal angle to it. Does it have any implication if political parties boycott elections? Does it have any credibility issue as it concerns the election itself? Or will just be the political party shooting itself in the foot?
No, okay. When you talk about credibility of an election, it means that the election is conducted in line with extant laws and regulations. If a party on its own, as in the case of Action Group in 1962, decides to boycott an election, it will be on the front leg of its own. The election will nonetheless go ahead. How it is rated will be a different kettle of fish altogether. But by which time the persons that were elected by that election that has been boycotted are already sworn in position. I will not encourage and advise Turaki faction to boycott the election. Rather, I will encourage them to join with the ADC and give a formidable opposition to the APC so that because politics and democracy thrives when there is rural opposition. If there's no opposition, if there's no plurality of views, then there is no democracy. So I would not encourage them because they will be the losers and it will not go well for the democracy. We do not intend to go back to
But would they have anything on the credibility of the elections? Boycott?
On boycott?
Yes, if a political party boycott the election, does it have any implication?
It does not make the election thereafter illegal. It doesn't make it illegal. Because it is your right to withdraw and it is your right to participate. If you decide that you're not going to participate, nobody will force you to so do. There is this freedom that you were reading from section 39 of the Constitution earlier on. So it is your freedom that you are asserting and you'll be entitled to see it and you can use it. But my personal opinion is that they should not boycott. Rather, they should join hands with the ADC and give a formidable opposition to the APC so that Nigeria generally will benefit from the plurality of views that are expressed.
Okay, now I want us to go now to the electoral umpire, and that is the Independent National Electoral Commission. Just yesterday, they announced that the revalidation of voters' card and registration should be put on hold. This is after some other political parties had to cry out to say, well, they're not comfortable with the process itself. Now, let's look at the electoral umpire, who seems to be having more of the spotlight as it concerns the elections come next year. Are you confident and comfortable with the approach being taken by INEC itself as it concerns some of the major decisions taken on account of other political parties and their readiness to conduct a free, fair, and credible elections come next year?
Recall that there's something that you must understand, that there's an electoral act. The electoral act regulates the conduct of the election. The electoral act 2026 ought to regulate the election that will be conducted in 2027. And in line with that electoral act, INEC has rolled out programs of activities to be embarked upon leading to the election in January of 2027. So if there is going to be any change now, it will practically affect the election. And I would suggest that rather than go that way, they should allow the election timetable run its full course.
But are you comfortable with the person of Professor Joash Ameputan and his ability to conduct a free, fair, and credible election? Are you comfortable with this person?
Well, so far, he has conducted only one election. That is the one of the
off-season elections.
FCT and the by-elections in Kano and Rivers State. To the extent that there were no violence, to the extent that the result came in on time, yes, I do not have any issues with him yet.
But Godwin Odjegba, you do know that some political parties were not comfortable with the result itself.
Yes, in Nigeria, elections are held in such a way that the loser usually don't feel comfortable with it. Recall that I am one person who is in politics as an activist in politics. I have nothing more to gain at my age and level in society. The point being made is that here at the moment, the man, let's give him the benefit of doubt, Professor Suas Amoki. The only thing that I said earlier on, which I'm also repeating, is that I didn't understand the decision he took as related to ADC in interpretation of the appeal court judgment. But be that as it may, let us also give him the benefit of doubt. So with time, he will expose his real self. If it's someone that we can go with, we will know. If it's not, we also know. But know that this election is now be determined by the majority party who already has 32 governors. If they had agreed on a transmission of the result, the electronic transmission of the result in real time, that would have made so much. But that one didn't go to the INEC because it's not the INEC that made the law. They're supposed to enforce the law. So once the law is there, let's leave our Mokito, let's see what he will do, and let's see how he does it.
Okay, now talking about leaving the INEC chairman, that seems not to be what the Obedient movement is planning to do. They want him to resign. And we do understand that according to credible information reaching us right here on Dialogue on Atlantic TV, that there are planned demonstration and protests and even occupying the INEC headquarters or secretariat in Abuja. Do you subscribe to this, or do you feel it will have far-reaching implication on account of not just the credibility, but security and protection of life and properties if there's a planned protest that might emanate on account of the planned Occupy INEC come couple of weeks' time? Rallied
and built around the president of Peter Obi. Both credibility is very high, both internationally and nationally. The Obedience must not do anything that will rub off on their candidate. Their candidate has very good image and reputation. So what they ought to do and what they should be doing is mobilizing support for the candidacy of Peter Obi so that if he gets the ticket of ADC, he can win the support and sympathy of some of us who are sitting on the sidelines. But if they go into protest and occupying the INEC head office, and given the Nigerian security situation as exhibited by our police, they could go violent and the tear gas and all of that will be shot. And sometimes even live bullets can be shot, which will not be the right thing to expect at this particular time. Let them mobilize for the support of Peter Obi and leave out any other thing, because the ballot will determine who wins the election.
Okay, now
the election, determine your votes, and then protect it.
Well, Barri Godwin Odjegba, I know you're a busy person, we'll soon let you go, but before we do that, now, there's this recent push that Nigerian political party seems not to be on driving on ideologies. Everybody seems to have his own view, and we're more like who is being elected. We now do persons election and not parties that seem not to have different ideologies. So I'm a bit curious to ask, on what ground should political parties now campaign on, especially as we go towards the 2027 election? Well, the economists will say, well, it's struggling, but it's still a bit solid. Insecurity, both of us know that it's definitely a major concern on the mind of many. But there are other issues that many feel should also be discussed as it concerns getting or winning the side of perceived voters come next year. So on what ground? Because now all we are hearing is attacks, personal attacks on each other and all of that. But on what ground should these campaigns be made so at least it will have a free, fair, credible election, and one that Nigerians will say, okay, I'm voting for this person on account of what he or she is promising?
Well, in Nigeria, generally, the political parties, or like in the Western world and in America, are bereft of ideology. Now, to the extent that the members now shift from political party, in the morning they are in APC, in the afternoon they are in ADC, in the night sometimes they are in Labour Party. It is because of this lack of ideology. That's why you see the fluidity of movement of politicians. And to that extent, you do not expect so much from them because they are bereft of ideas. Okay. What they probably propagate and say to the electorate is the fact that we will give you roads, infrastructure generally, give you electricity and all that. That's what they try to sell. Okay. So to that extent, not much is going to be expected from the Nigerian political parties. It's the individuals that would think that can make the difference.
Okay, well, Barri Godwin Odjegba, we need to really let you go, but we need your final word as it concerns what government need to do to indeed help protect journalists, because at the long run, politicians are the ones, many will say, is eating the policy unnecessarily, but in your own honest assessment, what needs to be done to help protect the political space, to help protect journalists as they try to express their feelings and also do their job effectively? What should the government do?
We already have the constitutional safeguards. Continue to express that provision of the constitutional safeguard to ensure that the lives of journalists are protected. Outside of that one, government should do more by reassurance that look, as journalists, your lives are protected. Then the various media houses can take insurance policies for the journalists, life insurance policies for the journalists, and society should ensure that they are protected. If there's anything that appears to affect journalists, society should ensure that they fight it and fight it headlong. That way, journalists will be protected, society will also be protected.
Well, I need to thank you so much, Barri Godwin Odjegba, for joining us. I will really appreciate your time with us. We know how busy you are, but you needed to take this time to add your voice to this growing issue and concern being raised by many Nigerians. We truly appreciate your time with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me once again. It's a pleasure.
Well,
have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you also.
Have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you also. And do have a wonderful day also. Well, anyway, that's more like a wrap up. You do know we'll always emphasize that the show does not end on this account. Let's get your reaction as it concerns the protection of free speech. And not only that, but journalists being protected on every ground and will not be affected or attacked on account of them doing their job. Those reactions will count. Those comments will count. Those feelings will count. So we advise you to send it to different social media platforms. They're already there on your screen. You can get them, see them, and let's get your reaction as it concerns it. Talking about press freedom, which we on Atlantic TV would always emphasize is needed, so we can always bring to you the needed information and all that will truly help to indeed not just only safeguard our democratic process, but indeed make the nation flourish. On account of that, I still remain Michael Gobadia. Stick around, still Viewpoint. You do know we have the news coming up next. And later on after the show, trending will follow. Stick around.